These two young girls screamed, "That's not our dad," at the back of a car after the car was stopped for a routine check. Then the cops rescues them from alleged kidnapper. Before we dive deeper into this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from today, and if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and also share with your loved ones. Sit back and enjoy this story as it unfolds. The streets of Hillsborough County were doing what they always did, cars flowing steadily, drivers heading home, nothing out of place. Then one vehicle broke the rhythm. Smith Terry was behind the wheel, moving with traffic, not speeding, not swerving. From the outside, there was nothing remarkable about him or the car he was driving. It looked like any other evening commute, the kind officers see hundreds of times a week. A patrol unit noticed the vehicle and initiated a routine traffic stop. They tried to slow down the vehicle with a simple signal, the kind that usually ends with a brief conversation and paperwork. But Terry didn't slow down. At first, officers weren't alarmed. Drivers miss signals all the time, music too loud, eyes on the road ahead, a moment of confusion. The patrol car stayed behind him, lights flashing steadily, waiting for acknowledgement. Still, Terry didn't pull over. The distance between assumption and concern closed quickly. The road ahead was clear. There were places to stop. Nothing blocked him. Nothing explained the delay. The car continued forward, steady, intentional. Inside the patrol vehicle, the tone changed. This no longer felt like a mistake. Officers began to watch more closely, how Terry held his lane, how he avoided looking back, how the opportunity to stop passed again and again. Every second that ticked by added weight to a single question: why won't he stop? At that moment, no one knew what was sitting in the back seat of the car. No one knew this routine patrol was about to uncover something far darker. What looked ordinary was already slipping out of control. The moment the patrol car stayed behind him, Smith Terry made his choice. The signals the patrol unit were showing him to slow down weren't a suggestion anymore. They were a command, and instead of obeying, he turned away from it. Without warning, Terry cut sharply onto a side street. The move was sudden, clumsy, and driven by urgency rather than planning. Officers followed immediately, the situation shifting from uncertainty to pursuit in seconds. What had started as a routine stop was now something far more serious. Terry's driving grew erratic. He overcorrected turns, drifted too close to curbs, and accelerated without regard for the road ahead. Each block passed faster than the last. The speed climbed, not all at once, but enough to tell officers he was trying to outrun them rather than simply escape notice. Inside the patrol vehicle, officers ran the license plate expecting an explanation to surface. Stolen car, warrant, alert, something. But nothing came back. No immediate red flags. No report tying the vehicle to a crime. That absence was unsettling. Most people don't flee without a reason, and when there's no obvious one, the danger often runs deeper. Over the radio, the pursuit was called in. Additional units began to adjust, anticipating Terry's next move. He cut through familiar streets like he was searching for an opening that didn't exist. Traffic was light, but every intersection carried the risk of someone pulling out at the wrong moment. Police closed the distance faster than Terry expected. His frantic driving worked against him, bleeding speed with every sharp turn. The space between him and the flashing lights behind him shrank, block by block. And still the question hung in the air: why was he running? The answer hadn't revealed itself yet, but it was already riding with him, waiting to be uncovered when the chase finally came to an end. The pursuit ended almost as abruptly as it began. Police units closed in, boxing the vehicle into a position Terry could no longer escape. With nowhere left to go, the car slowed and rolled to a stop. The engine idled, heavy and uneven, as if reflecting the tension inside. Sirens fell silent one by one, leaving an uneasy quiet in their place. Terry stepped out when instructed. Physically, he complied. He didn't argue, he didn't resist, but nothing about him suggested calm. His hands trembled as he raised them. His breathing came fast and shallow, chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. His eyes darted, not toward the officers, but back toward the car. That detail didn't go unnoticed. Officers approached with caution, alert to every movement. This was the moment when danger often revealed itself, not during the chase but after it. Terry's compliance felt rehearsed, almost desperate, like someone trying too hard to appear cooperative. As officers secured him, one of them paused. There was movement inside the car. Not the shifting of a loose object, not the settling of a seat. It was distinct, soft, human, and out of place. A sound that didn't belong in a vehicle that, until now, was assumed to contain only one person. An officer turned toward the rear passenger door, scanning through the tinted glass. The windows obscured the view, but the sound came again. A shuffle, a small movement. The air tightened. Up until this point, the chase had been about a driver who refused to stop. But now, standing beside the vehicle, officers realized they might be dealing with something far more serious. The focus shifted instantly, from Terry to whatever was sitting behind him. And in that moment, everyone understood this traffic stop was no longer routine. When the rear door finally opened, everything stopped. The tension that had followed the chase shifted instantly into something heavier, more alarming. Inside the back seat sat two young girls pressed close together, wide-eyed and silent. They were small, far too small to belong in the chaos that had just unfolded. One clutched the seatbelt with both hands. The other stared forward, frozen. Their ages became clear almost immediately. One was barely 4 years old, the other no more than 8. An officer lowered his voice, instinctively softening his tone. He knelt to their level, careful not to startle them. He asked simple questions, the kind meant to reassure, not interrogate. Were they hurt? Did they know where they were? The girls shook their heads. They didn't cry. That somehow made it worse. Then the officer asked the most basic question of all. "Is this your dad?" For a brief second, the girls looked at each other. No hesitation, no confusion. They spoke at the same time. "That's not our dad." The words landed hard. In that instant, the meaning of everything that had happened snapped into place. The refusal to stop, the erratic driving, the panic. None of it was random. Officers exchanged looks. The gravity of the situation settling in fast. This was no longer about a traffic violation or a fleeing suspect. This was about children who had no idea why they were in that car, or who the man in the front seat really was. The scene shifted again. What began as a pursuit had turned into something far more serious. The priority changed from arrest to protection. Officers moved quickly but carefully, ensuring the girls were safe, uninjured, and away from harm. Standing beside the vehicle, Smith Terry was no longer just a suspect who ran. He was now at the center of a crime that would change lives, his included. Once the truth surfaced, everything moved quickly. Officers carefully helped the two girls out of the back seat, guiding them away from the vehicle that had carried them through danger. One officer wrapped an arm around the younger child, lifting her gently, while another held the older girl's hand, speaking softly to keep her calm. The flashing lights, the noise, the confusion, none of it made sense to them, and officers knew their first responsibility now was protection. Smith Terry was pulled farther away, separated completely from the children. He was no longer just detained for fleeing. The situation had crossed into something far more serious, and officers treated it that way. As medics and officers checked the girls, the tension peaked. Small hands scraped knees, shallow breathing, every detail was examined. For a few long moments, no one spoke. Then came the relief. They weren't injured, no visible wounds, no signs of physical harm. Officers knelt again, asking gentle questions. Did they know the man driving the car? Had they ever seen him before today? The girls shook their heads. They didn't know his name. They didn't know why they were with him. They only knew they wanted to go home. The danger had passed, but the mystery deepened. If Smith Terry wasn't their father, then where was he? Who had been searching for them? And how long had they been missing? As the girls were wrapped in safety and care, one unanswered question hung in the air, one that would soon lead investigators to the truth. Their real father was still out there. With the children secured and out of harm's way, officers turned their attention back to the vehicle itself. What had started as a fleeing stop now demanded answers. An officer ran the registration again, this time slowly, carefully, verifying every detail. The result changed everything. The car didn't belong to Smith Terry. Records confirmed the vehicle was stolen, registered to another man entirely. The pieces began to align: the refusal to stop, the panic behind the wheel, the children who didn't recognize him. Terry was questioned at the scene. At first, his answers were scattered and contradictory. He stumbled over basic facts: where he got the car, how long he'd had it, why the children were with him. Each response created more doubt than clarity. Officers pressed harder, their tone firm but controlled. They weren't shouting. They didn't need to. The evidence was already closing in. Terry's story shifted again and again, unraveling under its own weight. The pressure became unbearable. Finally, Terry's shoulders dropped. His voice lowered. He stopped trying to explain and started admitting. He confessed that the car was stolen. He admitted he had no right to be driving it and no right to have the children inside. The truth had finally surfaced. What began as a routine patrol had exposed a crime far more serious than anyone imagined. And as Terry's confession settled in, one final step remained: reuniting the children with the person who had been looking for them all along. When Smith Terry finally spoke without hesitation, the room went quiet. He admitted what officers had already begun to piece together. He hadn't borrowed the car. He hadn't been given permission. He stole it. The words came out plainly, stripped of excuses. Then came the part that stunned even seasoned officers. The children were already inside the vehicle when he took it. That detail changed the weight of everything. Terry didn't just steal a car. He drove off knowing two young girls were sitting in the back seat. He saw them. He understood they weren't his. And instead of stopping, instead of calling for help or walking away, he chose to drive. Officers exchanged looks. The silence that followed said more than words ever could. Later, prosecutors would return to that moment again and again. They argued that intent didn't require violence or threats. Knowledge was enough. Terry knew the children were there. He knew the car wasn't his. And still, he made a decision: to flee from police, to keep driving, to put two innocent lives at risk. In that confession, the case stopped being complicated. It became clear. What Terry did wasn't an accident. It was a choice. With the confession on record, officers moved to the next urgent task: finding the children's father. The vehicle registration provided the name and contact information tied to the stolen car. An officer placed the call, knowing that on the other end was a parent who had no idea how close his children had come to danger. When the father answered, the questions were direct. Did he own the vehicle? Yes. Were his two daughters missing? The silence that followed said everything. His voice cracked as fear rushed in, followed by disbelief. He confirmed their ages, 4 and 8, matching the girls found in the back seat. The reality hit him all at once. His car had been stolen. His children had been inside. And someone else had been driving them through the streets while police gave chase. Officers reassured him quickly. The girls were alive, they were safe, they weren't hurt. Relief poured through the call, heavy and emotional. The panic gave way to gratitude, though the shock remained. Arrangements were made immediately. Officers coordinated the reunification carefully, understanding that this moment mattered more than anything else that day. As the father rushed to the location, the girls waited, confused but protected, just minutes away from being returned to the only place they truly belonged. The hardest part of the night was almost over. The moment the girls stepped into their father's arms was quiet, yet filled with an overwhelming sense of relief. Tears fell freely as the children clung to the only person they truly knew as home. Officers stepped back, allowing the reunion to happen while watching closely, ensuring everyone remained safe. For the patrol team, the tension that had gripped them since the chase began finally lifted. The adrenaline faded, replaced by a profound sense of accomplishment. They had prevented a potential tragedy, and in that small street in Hillsborough County, the girls were whole, unharmed, and back where they belonged. The community, who had watched the news unfold and whispered anxiously on social media, felt the ripple of relief too. Neighbors, friends, and families could finally breathe, knowing the children were safe and that law enforcement had acted decisively. Yet even in that moment of joy, one question remained heavy in the air. What would happen to Smith Terry? The man who had stolen the car, endangered innocent lives, and ignored every law in his path would soon face the full weight of justice. The happy reunion didn't erase the consequences, but it set the stage for accountability to follow. Once Smith Terry was in custody, the legal machinery moved quickly. Prosecutors filed formal charges: grand theft of a motor vehicle for taking a car that didn't belong to him, and 2 counts of felony kidnapping for putting the young girls in danger. Each charge carried serious consequences, and together they painted a picture of a crime that went far beyond a simple traffic violation. In court filings, attorneys emphasized the severity of the acts. It wasn't just the theft of property, it was the deliberate endangerment of children. The law distinguishes between accidents and intent, and here intent was clear. Terry knew the girls were inside the vehicle and still chose to drive recklessly, evade police, and place innocent lives at risk. Experts explained that in cases involving children, the justice system takes a particularly strong stance. Prosecutors argued that the combination of theft, evasion, and child endangerment demanded accountability. The focus was not only on what Terry did, but on what could have happened. The potential for tragedy was enormous. As the courtroom prepared for the next steps, one question loomed over everyone involved: how harsh would the sentence be? The answer would soon define justice for the victims and signal the consequences of choices made under disregard for law and life. The courthouse was tense the day the trial began. Every seat in the gallery seemed full, packed with people eager to witness justice unfold. Reporters hovered outside, cameras ready, microphones poised, while inside, families, neighbors, and community members watched silently, the weight of the story heavy in the air. Smith Terry sat at the defendant's table, appearing calm on the surface, though the eyes that occasionally flicked around the room betrayed a flicker of unease. Across the room, the prosecution team laid out the case methodically. Every detail of the chase, every erratic turn, and every movement that had raised alarm during the pursuit was recounted. Officers testified with precise recollection: the speed, the maneuvers, the moment they discovered the children. The backseat discovery became the centerpiece of the trial. Officers recounted their shock when the girls had spoken words that no parent or officer ever wants to hear. "That's not our dad." The jury was shown photographs, dash cam footage, and body cam recordings, not gratuitously, but to illustrate the danger and gravity of Terry's decisions. The evidence was undeniable. The car had been stolen, the girls were innocent, and Terry had knowingly endangered them. Emotional statements followed. Child welfare experts, neighbors, and community members described the lasting impact of exposing young children to such risk. The courtroom was quiet as the girls' father, composed but visibly shaken, spoke of his fear for his daughters, the panic of not knowing where they were, and the relief when police returned them safely. His words carried weight beyond the facts, reminding the jury that crimes like these are not abstract. They leave real, lasting scars on the most vulnerable. Terry's defense attempted to explain his choices, arguing about lack of intent and claiming panic during the pursuit. But prosecutors returned to the fundamental truth. He had made a decision. He knew the children were inside, and despite that knowledge, he fled. Intent was clear, and the deliberate nature of his actions left little room for leniency. After hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. The foreperson stood, voice steady but somber, guilty on all counts. Relief and a quiet triumph swept through the courtroom, though it was tempered by the memory of what might have been. Justice had been served, but the gravity of the crime remained undeniable. The sentence followed swiftly. 25 years of imprisonment were handed down, a period intended to reflect the seriousness of grand theft combined with felony kidnapping, and the real danger Terry had created. The gavel fell, echoing in the chambers, signaling that the legal system had acted decisively to hold him accountable. Reactions in the courtroom were a mix of solemn relief and emotion. Officers who had pursued the car years before felt the weight of closure. The girl's father allowed himself a small, exhausted smile. The community could finally feel justice had been realized, even as the memory of the incident lingered. Smith Terry was taken into custody immediately, beginning the sentence that would ensure he could no longer endanger others. Meanwhile, the girls, now safe and returned to the loving arms of their father, began the slow process of moving past the trauma they had endured. Counseling and care were arranged, emphasizing the importance of recovery and stability after such a terrifying ordeal. As the doors of the courthouse closed behind them, the story left a lasting message. Sometimes the most dangerous crimes hide behind ordinary moments. A routine traffic stop, a car on a street, a parent's unawareness, all had converged into a near tragedy. But through diligence, courage, and accountability, the system had worked as it should, protecting the innocent and ensuring that deliberate endangerment carried consequences. The case became a reference point for law enforcement and the community alike, a stark reminder that vigilance and decisiveness can prevent harm, and that justice, while often delayed, is essential when ordinary moments become the backdrop for extraordinary danger.